Earl Ferris Sampson Jr. I go by Buddy and have since I was a baby for obvious reasons. I was born in Georgetown. I want to talk a little bit about me and then kind of the church and kind of we ended up where we are in this moment in time. I grew up in Georgetown, Kentucky, a small little town right outside of Lexington. I was born to teenage parents who, I was an accident, let's put it that way. And then they would divorce a couple of years after having my brother. My brother's 22 months younger than me. And then my grandparents would adopt my brother and I. Basically, my parents would divorce, go different directions. My mom to Kansas with a boyfriend, my dad to Knoxville, Tennessee, and then to the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia. And my grandmother and grandfather raised me in the church. My grandparents were just amazing people. My grandfather, who was my father figure, went to West Point, graduated, played football actually for Vince Lombardi at Army, and graduated from West Point in 1957. He would go on to be a Green Beret Airborne Ranger and retire from the military as a lieutenant colonel. And I think it sounds like probably a weird thing to go into that much detail, but I think that helps you understand a lot about my childhood, about understanding the kind of man that raised me. My grandmother was a nurse. She stayed at home, took care of my brother and I. We went to a little Christian church in Georgetown called First Christian Church. It was a Disciples of Christ, Church of Christ church. Very legalistic. It sounds silly probably, but I was kind of raised to hate Southern Baptists.
So were you.
We
have a lot in common.
They had it all wrong. They thought you couldn't lose your salvation, and they thought you didn't have to be baptized to go to heaven, and all these things. So I came from a baptismal regeneration church mindset and very, very focused on works. I would go to University of Kentucky, meet my wife there, Brooke, and she grew up at Southeast Christian Church in Lexington, Kentucky, so you can kind of see these merging realities. I'm in this tiny little church my whole childhood. She's in this mega church. Bob Russell, I don't know if that name rings a bell, but her mother was actually there when Bob Russell was called to be pastor, and they were meeting in the basement of a little church in Louisville, Kentucky in 1967, and now I think they've got 20,000, 30,000 members or whatever. The Lord built a big church there. So we met at UK and then started going to Southeast Christian Church there, a non-denominational Christian church, sister church to Southeast. But we weren't believers, and we thought we were believers, but we had not really read the Bible. We had a very nominalistic, if anything, faith. We would serve in church some. And fast forward a little bit, my brother was a pretty severe addict. Really, I shouldn't even say pretty severe. Like, we were waiting to get the phone call, he was dead kind of addict. And so if you fast forward up through the early 2000s, we're married in 2003. You fast forward until about 2013, my brother gets arrested for the 6th time. He's like injecting Dilaudid into his jugular vein in his neck. He'd been homeless. And he got adjudicated to a place called Teen Challenge. It's a faith-based, it's a pretty remarkable story. Founded by David Wilkerson, Assemblies of God kind of church thing. And he went to there at Sanford, Florida, and was radically saved there. He was so far from the Lord. It was very much like a Paul, so far from the Lord. Thought we were all idiots for even saying we believed in Jesus, hated God. And then now he graduates his program in 2014. He's getting baptized. And I'm having a conversation with him around his life. And I have a degree in psychology at this point, which is just dandy, because now I can know what everybody's thinking. At least I thought so. And I'm asking him, and I'm like, tell me about the cravings and how. He's like, buddy, I have the Holy Spirit. It's different. Everything's different. My life's different. I was in church 3 times a day for a year. And I was like, yeah, but tell me about the tools. And he finally literally just said to me, you're not listening to me. He said, do you read your Bible? And I said, I read it sometimes. This is 2014. I said, I read it sometimes. And he said, then you don't read it. And he said, you need to read your Bible every day. And I kind of blew it off. And then January of 2014, that was 2014. So January of 2015, Brooke and I started reading the little Bible plan that he gave me from Teen Challenge, got into the book of John, and got saved. I don't know any other way to put it. Saw a totally different version of Jesus than I felt like I've been raised with. Understood grace, felt the freedom that comes with grace, and I just kept reading, and then we kept reading together, and the Lord just had us on this track together to really have our eyes open. We were just getting up in the morning. This is a true story. We would get up at 5:30 a.m. I was a high school principal. I didn't really tell you what I was doing in life. I had graduated. we both were school teachers, taught special education. I taught a lot of emotional behavior disorder kids. And then I became a high school principal in 2008. 2008. And then I did that for 9 years, up through 2017. But at this point, I'm a high school principal, and I'm going to run this school in central Kentucky. But we're getting up in the morning and reading our Bible for 30 minutes. And we have to get up early, and we're getting up for and reading for an hour and talking. And then next thing you know, we're getting up at 4:30 a.m. so we have enough time to talk about what we're reading, and our minds are getting blown, And then we kind of have the realization of oh my gosh, we have not believed in this Jesus. And side note, we don't know that we're becoming Southern Baptists. We're just reading the Bible for what it says. I know you all can appreciate that, right? But we were just oh my gosh, look what he's done. We had never heard of the Jesus who said things like, unless you take your cross daily, you can't even be my disciple. Or the Jesus who said, go sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and come follow me. We had never heard of this Jesus until we were reading. And so we get saved. We're at the same time going to a church pastor we didn't know it at the time by an open theist. I don't know if you're familiar with open theism, but essentially a disbelief in this foreknowledge and sovereignty of God moving forward. We didn't know it, but as we're reading our Bibles, we're going, who is this guy he's talking about? And it was a large church in Frankfurt, and I was working with the high school kids, and we left. That story for a different time, but I confronted the pastor and I said, I don't feel like this is the same Jesus. He confronted me. We argued about theology. He's the pastor. I'm like a nobody, but I got my Bible, and that's all I needed. And then we ended up at Buck Run Baptist Church in Frankfort, Kentucky. And so this is where our life really, I think, started to take a different pattern. Buck Run Baptist Church was founded in 1818. It was a church plant from Forks of the Elkhorn Baptist Church, which was founded in 1788. So Forks of the Elkhorn was founded in 1788, before Kentucky was even a state. And they launched 30 years later, Buck Run Baptist Church. We would start attending Buck Run Baptist Church, and the pastor there was Dr. Herschel York, who is the dean of the School of Theology for Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. And so not only Dr. York, but all his entire staff were just brilliant men with phenomenal training, and women. The women in the Dr. York, Tanya, and we were just, all of a sudden, we just went from this easy believism, superficial church to a church where it was like going to seminary, and we have Sunday school classes around hermeneutics and, New Testament survey, and 8 missionaries every Christian should know. And it was all of a sudden, we were like, wow, this feels so big, And I think the biggest thing I'd say, we realized for the first time, the significance of God's concern for his namesake. I think both of us had not ever grown up in a church where God's own glory was the pinnacle of the Christian experience, the reason we were saved, all of these things. And that just really hit us, I think, at Buck Run. It was just such a mantra there, was that, we exist to proclaim Jesus Christ to the glory of God, was everything. That's all we heard. And we make disciples for the glory of God. Everything was for the glory of God. And so in that process, I felt the call to ministry and to be out of I had this thriving Bible study, but I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. And we had built this huge house on this big farm in Kentucky, and it was like the Lord just kind of put right before us how much we were just only caring about ourselves, and we were like, we got to get out of this place, we're going to sell it. And first, I was like, we were so zealous because we were like, let's go, where in the world do they need Christians? We're going to go there. And Brooke gets online on Joshua Project, and we're like, Thailand, we're going to Thailand. And I found a job in Thailand at a Christian international school in Chiang Mai. And I applied to be the superintendent of this school, and I got the job after about 4 months of interviews and all this. I got the job, and I'm like, we're going. I got the job, we're moving to Thailand, we're going to sell our house, and we could sell our house in Kentucky and go live in Thailand for several years without even needing an income practically. And the Lord slammed the door, and through a series of events made it an impossibility for us, and we kind of were like, we gave you the blank check. And then Zach Thurman, the executive pastor for Dr. York at Buck Run Baptist, he and our kids were friends. He has 2 kids. Brooke and I have 5 kids. Our boys in the middle there are buddies, and they came over, and I was just talking to Zach, what's next for you in ministry? And he said, I think I'm going to move to the Front Range of Colorado to plant a church. And I said, man, that sounds incredible. What's planting a church? And he starts talking to me, and he said, where there are places that the North American Mission Board has identified as places that need new healthy churches, and where there's a absence of evangelism or Bible teaching churches. And I said, that sounds amazing. And he left our house, and Brooke said to me, we should be praying about that. And I'm like, yeah, we should. That's a big move for them. And she said, no, I mean for our family. We've been asking God, what would you have us do? And so we started praying. And we prayed several months worth of prayer and like continual confirmations. And I went to Zach and said, I think we want to move with you to Fort Collins and help you plant a church. And so at this moment, Brooke and I had started a little consulting company while I was a principal with a software entity that does like testing around the country. And that was making a little bit of money. And I told Zach, I'm just going to resign as the principal. And then we'll do this consulting thing. We'll just beg God to make enough money that we can live off of it. And he did. Barely. To remind us that he was God. We didn't miss a mortgage, but we were going, oh my gosh, like several months in a row in 2018. We were like, okay, Lord, you said. He did. He answered. And we moved in December of 17. I resigned in the middle of that summer. Just real quick side note so you can just appreciate this. The one story I always feel like I have to tell in the context of this. We have a farm in Kentucky. And we're trying to sell, we have 70 acres. I've got all this cattle. We raise Angus beef cattle and laying hens and meat birds. And I was like, I got all this USDA debt. I borrowed all the money to do this. And I'm like, Lord, we got to sell all this stuff. Anaplasmosis hits our cattle, kills all our cattle. Almost all of them, killed half of our herd. And the half that it didn't kill, we had to give antibiotics, which means we couldn't sell antibiotic-free organic beef, which is what we did. So we're sitting here going, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to cover our debts. Literally, we also, I don't share this part of the story often, but I probably should. The day we decided, okay, we're just going to take them to the auction was the lowest auction day in 6 years in the state of Kentucky. And I was like, are you kidding me? When I get our check, I'm like, that's it. We are in trouble, And so we're like, okay, Lord, you got to do something. I'm sitting at McDonald's with a high school kid that I was discipling, and I get this phone call, and this guy says, hey, I heard you're selling farm equipment. I just moved here to Flemingsburg. I'm in the market for farm equipment. I said, yes, sir, I am. How'd you hear about it? He goes, my pastor told me. And I was like, what? I haven't listed this anywhere at this point. He calls me, and he said, I'm going to Berea. That's a different direction. And then he calls me back 5 minutes later and says, you know what? I'm just going to come look at your farm equipment. I'm not going to go to Berea. I'm just going to come straight to you. He said, and his words were, I don't know why, I just got this feeling. And I know now, like, it was the Spirit of God. And so he shows up, he comes to our house, he gets out of his car, and he goes, man, you're selling this farm? I said, yeah, we are. We're selling everything, moving to Fort Collins. He said, Fort Collins? I said, yes, sir. And he goes, oh, honey, he's moving to Fort Collins. We just moved here from Fort Collins. I said, you're kidding me. He goes, no, to Flemingsburg. He said, why are you going there? I said, well, we're moving to plant a church. He goes, what kind of church? Southern Baptist Church. He said, do you know Kelly Parish? And I said, Kelly Parish of Living Rock, Tinmouth? It's a church plant in Tinmouth in the Front Range, part of the SIN network, North American Mission Board. And I said, yeah, that's part of our network. He goes, that's our church, man. This is so funny. He goes, well, let me see what you got in there. So I'm like already feeling that, like, we go up in the barn, and he's like, what are you selling? I said, I'm selling that tractor and all this implements. And he said, okay. He says, how much do you want for all of it? And I was like, all of it? And I got my phone out, and I was like, $35,000. He's like, okay, I'll take it all. I said, do you want to start a tractor? He goes, no, I'll buy it all. He came back 2 days later, checked for $35,000 and a 40-foot tandem dually gooseneck trailer, took all my stuff and left. We paid off the USDA. And we were just like, Lord, there was just such an affirmation, I think, about what we were doing. And, we're moving our kids and everybody out of their grandparents are all, our whole family's in central Kentucky. And, we're moving our kids and picking up and moving. And everybody was, honestly, a lot of people were pretty upset with us. And this was one of those things, and where we were also at that moment feeling the tension of like, gosh, is this what the Lord wants? And it's going to be so hard on our kids, and like, this is what we're supposed to do. And then there was just that confirmation along with several others. So we moved, planted Overland Church in Fort Collins. We moved there in December of 17. We launched the church in January of 19. So for that year in between, we tried to do some things on the campus, and we did some preview services, and then we launched in January of 19. And the church, the Lord has blessed it, and it's grown and it's thriving. They've got 300. When we left, there were about 260 people, I think, on a Sunday. And then they've got about 330 or so now on a Sunday, and they've got 80 college students from CSU. That was a real goal, was intentionally moving to where CSU is to try to reach college students. It's a real passion of ours. So from there, we pray in every college town that the Lord would use Overland Church to get a church in a college town started that cares about college students. We prayed in Alamosa and Boulder, even Boulder, Gunnison. We went right into the devil's lair. We prayed there. Gunnison and Grand Junction and Pueblo and here. And we just kept coming back here, and we probably have been here before moving here 4 or 5 times over the years, just camping and just loved the area, but also realized that just the need for the gospel here in this community. And so, we just saw all the little things, right? The Durango Demons and the Animas River and Purgatory Ski Resort. It's kind of hits you in the face, obviously, in this community. There's no one's hiding. I joke with people back in Kentucky. In Kentucky, people are still terrified of other people knowing their sin, and in Durango, people are willing to flaunt their sin. And we think about like Meltdown or Snowdown or whatever it is, and some of the things that we saw, and some of the things we wish we could wipe out of our brains. It's very public. And so, as we prayed about it, we felt like the Lord was nudging us. We talked to Zach. We went before the church. We raised up 4 or 5 other families to quit their jobs, to take new jobs. Some of them worked from home, but sold their houses and moved here with us in 2023. We moved here April of 23 is when we moved into our house on the east side of town. And then other families kind of trickled in, young families. The Lord He blessed us and raised up people in our church. And our church did a great job of really discipling, because of the collegiate context and whatnot, like the young family and the college student. And so we are the oldest family in the group that came down with us. And so we brought some young, healthy, vibrant, really excited, zealous Christian couples. And they've had babies since. And our church has grown a little bit by virtue of like naturally growing, which is super exciting. So we launched in April of this year. We planned on launching in September of this year. Like this month was our original plan when we moved here. But gosh, as Aleksandr was alluding to, I got here having teenage kids at the high school level. I've got Ainsley and Tripp, and they're drawing their friends, and they needed help at FCA, and so I was in FCA forever, and so I've got plugged in with FCA, and that helped us to reach students. Very long story short, all of a sudden we realized I've got enough students to have a student ministry, and they have nowhere to go. And so we started student ministry in October of last year on Wednesday nights, and we got up to 40 students, mostly from Durango High School. A few homeschool kids, some middle school kids, public school, homeschool, middle school kids. And then from that, I got to reach parents and meet parents. And at the same time, all of our young families were just really, they're meeting, hanging out with their estheticians, and they are just really, really engaged the community. Like we talked a lot through our year-long core team meetings to make sure that our people recognize we're moving to Durango to reach people who don't know Jesus. And so we have to form friendships in the secular community, as well as being able to stay connected as a core team. Without going too far down this road, when we moved to Fort Collins, the pendulum swung too far one direction, and we were so evangelistic that we were like spiritually anemic. And we had, the first 2 years there were brutal. To the point where there were many conversations about, should we just go back home? This is awful. That first year, 2018. And then as the church launched, it was like in the middle of 2019, we're like, oh my gosh, we have some Christian friends. Here we try to say, we're gonna act like a church, we're gonna love on each other, we're gonna do meals together, but we're gonna try to form our relationships in the community and not just amongst each other, and so that we can lead people into the church and into a relationship with Jesus. And so they did a phenomenal job of that. So we launched on Easter Sunday of this year, and it exceeded expectations numerically. I think we had 216 people at our launch service, and we were not ready for that. It was a huge blessing, but we were scrambling. And then, we were at the fairgrounds. The number dipped after launch, which we expected, and then we've slowly grown back. We have been over 100 people or so on a Sunday since probably May, middle of May. And today we had 174 at Noble Hall, 130, 157 of which were in the room that seats 182. It was crammed in there, but it was good. And we have started collegiate ministry. We have 4 events this week for Fort Lewis kids. We've had a lot of Fort Lewis students that are showing up to church, which has been really good. The women's Bible study starts this Wednesday. Our student ministry trek ran through the whole summer, and it's continued, and we meet at the rec center on Wednesday. What else, Brooke? Is there anything I'm missing about kind of where we're at right now?
There's men's Bible study as well.
Yeah, men's. I'm tapped out on teaching right now a little bit, so our men's Bible study we're postponing. I got a couple other guys that are going to teach. So that's kind of where we are now. We've had 5 baptisms, 3 of which are high school kids. Wait, that's right? 3? Or is it 4? 4 high school kids. 4 high school kids, 1 adult. The adult who was baptized, did our scripture reading today, was an addict for 17 years in Austin, Texas, has been saved and has just jumped in and served like crazy at our church. It's been a phenomenal thing, and he read scripture for us today to start the service. So yeah, I mean, the Lord has just, he's gone before us. I don't know any other way to say that. We feel like we have these goals and these plans, and we were going to bring these to fruition. And I, as a former principal and kind of a big picture, I think we could accomplish these milestone mentality. And then the Lord just kind of crushed it all and was like, no, we're going to do it way faster than that. And so I've used the illustration of, if you've ever been surfing or boogie boarding, I know in Durango that's unlikely an issue at the Standing Wave, I guess, down there in the new Whitewater Park. You could do it there. But there's a feeling of, I got to catch this wave and stay in front of it. And I've done a lot of surfing and boogie boarding because my grandparents lived in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and I got to go down there a lot when I was older. But there's a feeling where, oh my gosh, the wave's going out from under me, and as hard as I'm paddling, you start to feel like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back on this wave or not. And we're kind of in a season right now in our church where we're building the plane while we're flying it, and we also felt like we had a really short runway, and so we're trying to just stay ahead of what the Lord's doing right now and try to manage it well and steward it well. So that's us. That's our church in a nutshell. So we come from a pretty rich Southern Baptist heritage. I'm still learning Southern Baptist things. I mean, I'm pretty new to the SBC world, and so we give to the cooperative program. We support some missionaries as well. I've learned a lot about the structure between the seminaries and the North American Mission Board and the International Mission Board. I go with the IMB this month to Lima, Peru, with a new program that the Sin Network has done in collaboration with the IMB to create partnerships between church planters and International Mission Board missionaries to help immediately have a partnership formed early on, so that we can be a place that they can come to and be cared for as off the field and on the mission, and also be a place that we can send people to have like a DNA of international missions in our, from the beginning. So that's a really cool thing. So that'll be the end of this month. But yeah, what's that?
I think one of the reasons why, there's the practical reasons why we need to do this. There's also the opportunity reasons, sort of like what's the positives. And when I think about the church that we want to be and what we've strived to be, is we'd like to be that neighborhood church that's just an iconic beacon of the community. And you guys remember times in your life where the church was open every day, hosting one activity or another, reaching one people group or demographic or another, and it was the center of the community life. And the opportunity that we have with these facilities to be that beacon and inside Durango is incredible. And this kind of a merger could help us do that, where their activity is through the roof, and they've got the volunteers and the training and the pipelines to sort of make these things not just take off but continue and proliferate beyond the energy of just their original group. And that's something that under my leadership we've really struggled to do. We started with I took over in COVID, and so our numbers were down anyways. And it's been transition and change and loss since then. And we've struggled to fill committees. We've struggled to do outreach events on a consistent basis that have gained traction. And those are the things where it's like, well, these guys are able to do it, and they're like the church that we'd like to be if things sort of went our way in terms of looking at Durango like the local mission field that like in the way that we do. And so that's where I get sort of excited. I guess it'd be worth hearing from your guys' perspective. What excites you about the idea of the merger?
Yeah, so I'll just say right off the bat here that we have a pretty deep-seated belief that the local church exists as an instrument to see the mission of God unfold. Yes, the church should be able to gather, to edify and encourage one another, and these things are true, but for the sake of the mission. And so I'll just tell you, if Overland Church is a church in this community for 50 years, 70 years, 72 or 4 years, amazing. But if not, we just want to be faithful with what the Lord has put right in our faces right now. And so we want to see the campus reached. We want to see the community reached. We want to see it served. We want to see revival happen in the context of the local church. All while knowing that the time of our church will be numbered, the days will be numbered, and that the Lord is good to give it life and to take it away when He has another plan. And so I think for us, there are a few things. First of all, there is obviously a legacy that exists in this building. I was telling Aleksandr, as I've been here for the last year and a half, I have heard a lot of horror stories about the Christian community here, and I don't want anything. You all, whether you realize it or not, have been very immune from the accusation. I should put it that way. When I talk to people and I hear about what's happened at First B and New Life or New Hope or whatever it was called, and the Kanakuk camp, and I could kind of go down the list. Christ the King. There's been a lot of people hurt by the church, and I've not heard a single negative thing about Parkside since I've been here, not one. So there's clearly been some degree of faithfulness and loyalty to not have some radical moral failure, or you are in a small population, and so there is a legacy here that I think is healthy, and that I would love to see the opportunity for it to continue. There is a lot of wisdom sitting in this room, wisdom about this community, wisdom in spiritual things, wisdom as a member of the church. Right now, our church is very lopsided from an age standpoint. The Lord is good to give us people who are more seasoned in life and want to see the next generation reached. But I will just tell you, one of our real goals is to see the next, the up and coming, and I'm, pointing at Peyton and Rory, but literally to be able to see the younger, the next generation be invested in a very intentional way to be raised up. These facilities would obviously be a humongous blessing. You guys are probably aware that we knew coming here to church plant that the facilities thing would be a problem. We did not know it would be this much of a problem. And I say that because I think upon getting here and doing our research, there was a couple of realizations. Number one, there is nothing that fits a church here that you can sign a year-long lease on, for example. There isn't any space for that. Number two, there's nowhere to create it either. We're in a valley that's pretty much landlocked in a canyon in such a way that it's not like you can just grow, let's just buy this plot of land. We intentionally want to be in town, in Durango, accessible to college students, accessible to high school students right out of school. That's why we've been meeting at the fairgrounds. Because we want to be something where it's this is local and this is accessible. We don't want to be on Third. Ideally, somebody said, what about the Durango Christian Church? And I was like, catty corner from First B? No, that's not where we want to be. I would love to see all those churches on Third get redeemed. Don't get me wrong. All those churches. We pray it all the time. That's a big prayer of ours, that the Lord will put a healthy church in there or turn it into a pizza place. But get rid of what it is right now. Yeah, I think that there is I'll say this. There are people in this room who are ready and willing to invest in a family, people who are one generation behind where you all are, who are either new to parenthood, they've got kids that are on the way up that are grown kids, or that are, I'm thinking about even my wife and I, for example, we've never raised it. We have an 18-year-old daughter, that's our oldest kid. And we've never been, and it was interesting. She's a great kid. She loves the Lord. I'm excited to see what the Lord does with her. But when she turned 18, there was I'm in your house, but I'm an adult now, and so we're going to have some of those. We're going to have some, today, she came up and she said, Dad, there's free some kind of Belgian dogs for sale. And I was like, okay. She said, I'm going to get one. I said, no, you're not. And she said, I'm 18, I can get my own puppy. And I said, when you're not in our house, you can live in the house, but that puppy isn't. So how are you going to manage this, And she was like, I'm going to ask Mom. I don't know if she asked you yet, but okay. You better not.
You're the only one this has ever happened to. You know that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's
you're preaching to the grandparents.
Yeah, I know. And so I think there is opportunity for relational investment both directions, between you all and the people that we have at church. We have a lot of young families and a lot of little kids running around, and it's chaos. There was one family that had to, take her 2 different kids out multiple times because they were fussing in the church service, which I think it's a beautiful thing. It doesn't even bother me to hear a baby crying in church, but I know it does some people. But I just think there is mutual opportunity to see the gospel, the work gospel work to continue, because the fact is, and it is just a fact, is we don't want to be a church that a Sunday gathering is what we're all about. We want to be a church that a Sunday gathering is merely the piece of what we're able to offer to the community throughout the course of the week. And we're doing that, but we're doing it absent a place to be. And I think we're also, again, doing it with a population that is largely brand new to Christianity. I was telling Aleksandr, in our church right now on a given Sunday, I would say we are less than 50% actual believers. We are probably, let's just say 50% for the sake of numbers. We're probably 50% believers. Then we're probably 30% of think they might be a believer, but part of my job being to cause them to question whether that's true or not, because I think there's just a lot of professed Christianity that isn't believed, culturally in those things. And then we're probably 20% not Christian, but seeking. I mean, I talked to a kid this morning who was a Fort Lewis College freshman who said, this is the first time I've ever been in a church in my life. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. I said, how'd you learn about it? And he said, sidewalk chalk. And I said, you read some sidewalk chalk and you walked into church? And he was like, yeah, I thought I'd give it a try. I said, that sounds divine to me. What do you think? And he was like, well, I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but I figured I'd give it a try. I said, well, the Lord's glad. But he came and he sat in there, back row in the corner. But I think there's an opportunity for both mutual edification and to truly be able to see the work of the Lord be better stewarded and more effective in this community that's desperate for it in partnership. So,
but could you talk about sort of two things? First, philosophy of ministry, your guys' vision and approach, and then secondary to that, sort of your culture and what life, church life looks like for you guys.
Sure. So philosophy of ministry, I will just tell you that first of all, we believe the Bible is authoritative, inerrant, inspired. And we believe that ministry can only rightly unfold biblically under that existing pretext. I teach expositorily. We're preaching through the book of John. We're in John chapter 7. So Sunday mornings, we believe that the first step of discipleship begins at the pulpit. But I do just want to emphasize that we are believers that discipleship is the aim of the church. That Jesus did not call us to make baptizees; He called us to make disciples. And we kind of invest all our eggs in that basket. I'll just tell you that our goal is to see programmatic discipleship relationships and things like our Bible studies, church service Sunday mornings, our student ministry, college Bible study that we're going to do. But then also non-programmatically, where we want to equip people to have one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three, one-on-5 discipleship relationships in the context of their own life. My expectation and my goal is to see that the average person in our church feels ready to go and have coffee or cook dinner for somebody and coach them through life just as a believer. But the discipleship thing is a huge thing. We have 4 core values that are associated with our church. And let me first of all tell you our mission statement, which is we glorify God by proclaiming Jesus Christ and making disciples who serve Durango and multiply to the nations. And then there exist 4 terms that make up our 4 pillars: proclamation, discipleship, service, and multiplication. And so everything that we do will fall under those banners. And I emphasize discipleship because I am just a believer that the church exists to make disciples. And when a disciple is made, the other 3 will unfold naturally. You don't have to compel people to serve when they're a disciple. You don't have to compel them to go and multiply. They will desire it if they're truly a disciple. Same thing for proclaiming Jesus. And so that's what we want to see unfold, are those core values. We want to see our church multiply. We want it to be healthy, in a healthy place. I love the idea that our church gets to 250 people and we send 25 this time to go to anywhere in this, godforsaken corner of the state of Colorado. Whether you guys realize it or not, coming from the Front Range, yes, they need Jesus there, but the resources abound in the Front Range. And I was joking with Aleksandr, I can make a phone call from Fort Collins to Longmont and say, I need somebody to come up and do student ministry, and there's 1,000 kids in the Front Range. Like, oh yeah, we've got some kids ready to go do student ministry. And we're like in the kind of forgotten corner of the state down here and there are a lot of empty pulpits. You guys are probably aware, like a lot of empty pulpits. There's actually been a discussion about, do we go back to like the circuit rider days in the 4 corners where there's a rotation of pulpit fillers, which I think is bad. I mean, that's a plan B. That should be a plan B. And so I love the idea of being able to plant another church. But to Aleksandr's point, we want to see my job is to equip the saints for the work of ministry, and we want to see ministry unfold through the people in the church, that it becomes a regular part of their life, and that looks a variety of different ways. We have people who will never teach a class and will run the soundboard every Sunday faithfully, and they do a great job. We have people who will never be on the setup team, but they will cook meals for Trek. I mean, we have a family right now that when we are like, we need a meal for Trek, boom, you may know, I don't know if you know Gracie and Andy Parker, but they have been like, let us cook. We'll cook for whatever we can cook for. And it's been a huge blessing to us. And so ministry looks different for different people, but my job is to help equip it, help it come to the surface so people see where they fit in their giftings and then are able to serve, accordingly. Church life, it's wild. I'm just going to be candid with you. We've got a lot of young families. There's kids everywhere. Our church, if you're curious about our liturgy, we tried to protect a pseudo-traditional style liturgy that doesn't allow the liturgy to be repulsive to a seeker, like a cutter. This kid, his name is Cutter, Cutter, that walked in the door. We wanted to be able to walk in and feel welcomed and accepted, and as the service unfolds, feel like he's not radically out of place. So when it comes to like the church service, I know some people fall into the super seeker-friendly camp, and some people fall into like the hyper-orthodoxy. This is only for baptized believers in the first place, so we don't care about anybody else camp. I'm in the middle in Durango. I think if you're not, you're going to struggle. Which means we're gonna sing healthy theological songs. We sing a hymn every Sunday, at least one. And then we do 3, maybe more contemporary songs. All of our contemporary songs are theologically sound. We don't sing there's a lot of garbage out there. I'll just put it that way. We actually talked about it in our church service today. There's a lot of garbage. We don't sing garbage. We sing good songs that exalt Christ and proclaim the gospel. We do a little call and response. We do scripture reading every Sunday where a member of the church, male, gets up and reads the Bible the text for that day and says, "This is the word of the Lord." The congregation responds, "Thanks be to God." This is the loudest I've ever heard it this morning. I don't know if you noticed that. I feel like people finally caught on. It's been like trickled. It was like 12 of us, then 50, and now today it was like, "Thanks be to God." I was like, "Oh!" When I was sitting I was playing the little cajon box for worship today, and so I was still sitting up there during scripture reading, and I was like, "Wow, that sounds good." And then we have we do a missions moment every service at the beginning, where we have a lot of partners between Buck Run Baptist Church and Tri-Cities Baptist Church in East Tennessee and Center Point Church, and we have churches that have helped us and support us, and so we often highlight their missional endeavors. And we actually sent Mackenzie Baldwin, who's part of our church, we just sent her with the IMB to Panama for the next, I think, 10 days. And then she'll be back. And so we commissioned her last Sunday to go on behalf of Overland Church to serve with the Buck Run team there. So then, we have the worship, scripture reading. I preach a sermon. I almost always have some form of call to respond to the message for both the believer or unbeliever. The band returns, and then I close out. So that's kind of what our liturgy looks like.
Sounds pretty familiar.
How do you teach the children?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm going to brag about it. Our children's director, Buckley, and her husband, Kyle, they're phenomenal. They grew up under Zach's leadership at Buck Run back in Kentucky. They moved from Kentucky to Fort Collins and then to here. Right now we're doing a video-based children's curriculum, but it is absolutely theologically robust. One of my highlights at our church in Fort Collins was we had a parent come out and I said, "Where's Buckley?" And I was like, "I'm not sure." She's like, "I need to talk to her." And I was like, "Okay." I followed her over. I'm kind of monitoring it, and she put this paper down and she says, it says, I am a, and has like a picture of a person, and it has a blank line, and it says sinner. And she goes, "Shouldn't that say a child of God?" And Buckley says, No. Child of God comes later. But first, your 6-year-old needs to know they're a sinner. And so she's chosen her own curriculum. It is awesome. We used what was called the Family Discipleship Plan in Fort Collins through Tri-Cities Baptist Church, another super healthy, very missionally oriented, very theologically deep church, where it gets out of just teaching Bible stories and tries to actually teach. It's more of like what we're doing is more of like a systematic theology for children. So everything from, when we get into like the 1st through 3rd grade class, right, our 1st and 2nd grade class, they're getting theological depth. I don't remember the name of the thing she settled on, but she loves it because we have 2 people in every room to teach children, and we have to have a teacher who is like qualified. Both of them have to have been through all the training. We do trauma-informed training because we have a lot of adoptive families that are coming to church, and I'm working on our youngest son is adopted from Seoul, South Korea. He's 9, and then we have quite a few adoptive families, and so we do a lot of trauma-informed training, and everybody who's in children's is ready to do that. But then we have one kind of aide and one teacher, and so the teacher is trained in how to go through the online-based curriculum that we're using right now, and we've heard great things. So
Is it at the same time as you have the worship time, or like we have Sunday school and then we have worship time?
Yep.
Is the children separate from the regular
yes,
worship
so
time?
as of right now, we have babies through 2nd grade, and it's optional, but it meets at the same time worship meets. We have a 1-hour service for both. That happens for the littler kids. We want the 3 to 5 kids to be able to worship, 3rd through 5th grade kids, so like the intermediate and older kids to be able to be in worship. And actually, we anticipate having to talk this week about promoting next week, that the week after that, we're probably going to have to do 2 services at Noble Hall because, again, we're going to outgrow it. And in the 2 services, we want to be able to offer for the first service both Sunday school and something up through 5th graders, and then have the second service be able to have regular worship, so the kids can be in both, so that they would be able to have the experience of being both in church and being, in children's. Yeah. So that answer your question. Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you some questions. But
Sure.
I want to give you a little bit of background about me first. I'm very familiar with Fort Collins. I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree from CSU. I was an associate professor at CSU.
Oh, wow.
And I also worked at Hewlett-Packard, so I'm very familiar with Fort Collins.
Yeah.
I was saved and baptized when I was 9 years old. I've been in a Baptist church for 75 years of my life. I was a deacon in 3 Baptist churches. I've been in Baptist churches, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Japan.
Awesome.
One of the questions I have for Aleksandr, Mike and I are both deacons in this church. Why were we not included in all of this discussion for this thing?
It really just was a matter of practicality, I guess, with, when we transitioned from having a deacon body to having sort of elders in there. Traditionally, in Baptist churches, deacons function as elders, and when we made the distinction, it was a matter of, these are people that are approved for teaching and administration of the church. For us, elders function as a committee, so it comes from as a recommendation from a committee. It wasn't to slight you guys or undercut you guys. It was more just, hey, Tom wanted to get some coffee, and we had a conversation that turned out to be pretty important, and it wasn't meant to be a background deal. And this basically is between Tom and I's conversation is when everybody else heard. It was a matter of 2 weeks. So sort of the best we can do.
One of my concerns is Aleksandr said you were not willing to change the name of the church. My question is, what's wrong with having Baptist in the name of the church?
Yeah.
I've been in a Baptist church for 75 years.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, well, some people don't want to go to a church with a Baptist in the name. My question is, name is very important. Tom teaches us in Sunday school all the time how important names were in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The name tells you what kind of person that is. Baptist tells me what kind of church it is. When I came to Durango, before I even finished moving the furniture into my house, I started looking online and looking for Baptist churches. It bothers me when we take the name Baptist out of the church.
I understand, and I would be happy to answer it. First of all, you came looking for a Baptist church because you were a Baptist. So you knew what you were looking for. If you walk to Fort Lewis's campus right now and said, what's a Baptist? They're going to say, if they're being honest, they hate gay people. They love Donald Trump. They would say they are bigots. They would say they are racists. Because we are in a post-Christian reality here where Baptist does not mean what it meant coming from Kentucky. I want to tell you, if we were planting this church in central Kentucky, we would call it Overland Baptist Church because it distinguishes for 90% of the population what we believe because they know. In Durango, that is not true. And we didn't come here to acquire Baptists. We came here to be a place where people come in, they hear the gospel of Jesus Christ, and at some point they find out that they're Baptist. I had a conversation with a guy just a little bit ago, actually, it's been probably a month ago, who, when talking to me, said he has been at our church since the first week of May, so 1 month into our existence, and he made a comment to me after church to the extent of, the Baptists, blah, 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 blah. And I said, did you know we're a Baptist church? He said, really? And I said, yes. And just to be clear, we affirm the Baptist faith and message. Even to affirm what Aleksandr was saying, we believe in a plurality of elders that will lead the church. We do not believe in deacon leadership. We believe in deacon servanthood, as I think Scripture intended in the first place, and that we believe that pastor, elder, overseer is one person, one title, so to speak, that all of those roles, that there are no elders that aren't pastors, and there are no pastors that aren't elders, and we remain true to that. We believe the office is reserved for a man only. So we are as Baptist as you can get, so to speak, but also are unwilling to create in this type of an environment an unnecessary obstacle in a post-Christian reality where people have allowed the media to label what an evangelical or a Baptist is. Very few people are going to be familiar with any ecclesiology or theology by the name Baptist unless they already had come from a place where that was the case. And if so, they'll find it out at our place. But we want to be the kind of place that by our virtue of our name doesn't create an unnecessary obstacle, because it's an unnecessary aspect of how we do business. Does that make sense? Again, I hope you would understand, like I was saying, that, it would be interesting to see, but the Baptist roots for our church are going back, 2.5 centuries at this point. And so there's nothing not Baptist about us from a Baptist faith and message. Again, an ecclesiological or an autonomous church, that particular standpoint. So I hope that makes sense. I can totally understand what you were saying. Like I said, I know in Kentucky, Baptist versus Methodist versus Lutheran versus Presbyterian all has a pretty decent, 75% of the population, 15 and older, can be like, oh yeah, I know that they baptize babies in the Presbyterian church, but I know they don't in the Baptist church. And the Methodist church, they sprinkle people and they have a different kind of understanding maybe of grace here and there. And the Lutheran church is way more liturgical. Like they will know those kind of basic things. But in this community, again, our goal was not to get sheep who are Baptists from other places, but to bring new sheep into the flock that the Lord has intended. When Jesus says there are sheep that are mine here, and that they are not in my flock, and they're supposed to be. I have sheep in this town. We wanted to look at it through that lens. I hope that makes sense. I hope you can understand that. But
I understand it, but I don't agree with it.
Fair enough. And I listen again. I've spent most of my career in disagreeable situations. There's nothing more disagreeable than being a high school principal, and the Lord has been good to help me live in that reality. So I understand. I do understand.
As long as the SBCA is on
The sign?
sign, so that people that come from Kentucky and Texas, they know what that means.
Yeah.
Baptist church, and they will attend at that. That was my concern. If that's left on the sign, that will let them know that we are Baptist.
I understand. I don't know that we'll leave it on the sign. I don't know. That hasn't been on it's not a concern of mine, because I think 98% of people go online, and I'll just say this firsthand.
Okay.
When we found so many people who, I was actually shocked, to be very honest with you, how many people showed up to our first month at the fairgrounds and would say, when I'd say, how did you learn about us? Social media, and then I went to your website, and then I read your beliefs. And I was like, wow. I think that's the way that, for the most part, again, I believe you, that you are correct, that a traveling Baptist will look for that on the sign. I'm not negating it. But again, even at this moment, we are an SBC church. I support the SBC. I've got 24 hours at Southern Seminary, and I'm still on my way there. Dr. Work's been good to give me some books to read in the absence of being able to complete my classes. But I think we have to be willing to move into something where where the name, to use your point, doesn't become something that people get to assign a straw man for. You know, I can't tell you how often when I say to somebody, when they say to me, "Are you a Christian?" that I usually respond now, "What do you mean by that?" Because it has become so intimately tied to right-wing conservative. Listen, I'm a Republican. I grew up in a household. My whole household was politics with a lieutenant colonel grandfather. Trust me, and I know where I stand politically. But I refuse to be knitted to I worship Donald Trump. I don't worship Donald Trump. I despise Donald Trump, and I will vote for him. This fall. But I've been begging God to raise up somebody else to do that job. But I'm not going to allow a straw man to be developed, if you will, because of. So I usually have to ask back, and I want to make sure when I say yes, that I'm affirming what you're believing, about me. So, yeah.
Would you support the promotion of like Lottie Moon Christmas offering?
Oh, yeah.
The Annie Armstrong?
100%.
The state mission offering?
Absolutely. Yeah, we do that. So like I said, we give to the cooperative, we're actually giving early. The cooperative program doesn't expect Southern Baptist or church plants to give for their first 12 months. But, we're giving, we're giving 6% right now, and then we give to the Mesa Verde Baptist Association. We will absolutely do a Lottie Moon offering and an Annie Armstrong offering. 100%. Yes. We're all, listen, if you were happen to keep up with anything that my sermons from the pulpit, one of the tensions that I'm finding in this community, and you can probably relate, is the tension between people who are seeking Christian community and they're believers, and they're looking to be, especially that age of kid, the 25 to like 35-year-old, to find a place where they fit and have Christian community, but me not allowing them to get so comfortable that we found our community, we can like put our feet up, but recognizing, no, let the nations be glad. Like our concern is the gladness of the nations, and they're not worshiping God, and they should be. And so we have a responsibility and an opportunity, a privilege to be able to make that a huge part of what we do. So we're a very missionally minded church, in general, both within the context of the cooperative program and outside of it. So, yeah, yes, sir.
In your Sunday school classes, do you use a particular type of literature?
We haven't started Sunday school classes outside of our Bible studies yet. So as of yet, we're doing an inductive Bible study that we use, that we are teaching. Right now on the front end of church planting, we're trying to really help people to understand they ought to be reading the Bible and how to do it. And so all of our focus right now is around equipping younger people particularly, but everybody, with strategies to read the Bible and know what it says. And so I've done like a hermeneutics through Ephesians men's Bible study at Durango Joe's last fall. And my wife's doing like a search the word that she's leading with a group of women, for example. But when it comes to the Sunday school stuff, we've used some pre-created things, but I love, I'm a teacher, and at heart, I love to teach. And so I've developed a lot of the curriculum that they use in Fort Collins, a lot of the different classes, like whether it was the Romans class or we did 7 heresies in the contemporary Christian church class that I got to create. It was a blast, and I shared the teaching with some other guys. And but we do both. We will purchase things and we will create our own things, all at once. So was there something specific you were curious about, like company-wise or trustworthiness-wise, or?
Would we be able to maintain the classes that we already have?
I would say on the front end of that, no, but hear me out why. It's not no because there's anything wrong with the classes. One of the biggest fears that I have in this merger from the beginning is that there would become two churches, that there would be 2 flocks instead of the merging of into a single flock that recognizes the balance between the consumption and the receiving from the church and the contribution to the church and its well-being and its growth. And I think one of the biggest things is trying to finding that balance so that our people don't realize, they're the Parkside people that have their Sunday school class. I imagine it's been a huge blessing for you. I've watched some of Tom's teaching. I know he's a phenomenal teacher, and I'm no fool. I've seen the map with all the tribes of Israel, drawn out in here, pretty detailed. And so it has zero to do with the content, zero to do with its benefit. It simply is, from a leadership perspective, trying to make sure that we don't forsake the well-being, the continuity, the direction of the whole in order to retain something that would potentially could create like a rift or something in between. I think whether you guys realize it or not, like the greatest threat to a merger like this is that there is a rift in between the two groups that come together. And my job is to mitigate that, this being part of it, but then also to manage it in the future as we go forward. I didn't share this, but when I was a principal at two different schools, both schools that I came into were they were led by beloved people in the community, but they were in a position where they needed new life and redirection in order to meet state expectations and those kind of things. And it was a huge blessing to me. Even now, I realize how much of a blessing that it was, because it was thrust me in a position to be able to honor the reality of these people, their legacy, that they were loved, and be able to gently move from, okay, now look at this new season this new chapter, that we're heading into, that everyone will benefit from. And in both of those experiences at the school and in our school at church in Fort Collins, I don't know how much Aleksandr has shared with you, but in Fort Collins, we were given a building. It was called Southside Baptist Church. Does that ring a bell to you? It was off of Horsetooth. If you turn,
Yes, I know the area.
okay, yeah, there's a little brick building on 5 acres, and their pastor had left, and the guy that was there was an interim pastor, and he was a great guy. And they had probably about 10 to 12 people on a Sunday, but most of them were actually driving in from Alt and from Severance, which doesn't mean anything to you, but unless you're familiar with the Front Range. But basically, the other side of I-25. So, Fort Collins is on the west side of I-25. They were driving over 30, 45 minutes to come to church in order to keep, so that the church didn't die. That was kind of the mentality. We got to, if we go to our church in our neighborhood, this church ceases to exist. And they approached Zach, our pastor, because we had been doing preview services and had gained some traction, and said, we want the legacy of this church to continue. And they gave us this church and gave us the key on January the 1st, 2019. To this day, there are still 3 people, I think it's down to 2 now, because I think one of them had passed away, who go to the church, the same Southside church, but now it's Overland Church, and they serve in the church there, and it's been a super sweet thing. And if you were to talk to Velma or you were to talk to Dave, you would hear them say how this has so blessed them. And there were some of these similar conversations about the name Baptist. That was even one of the things that was raised. It was Southside Baptist Church. And so, yeah, so that's
Where did you come up with the name Overland?
So a combination of things. Part of it sounds selfish, but it really isn't intended to be. I love four-wheeling and overlanding. Zach does as well. We were sitting in our living room one day and we were saying, what's something that people know in Colorado? What's something that would be to sound attractive? Kind of like the Parkside idea. Like, we're a Parkside church. Like, it's got... And so the Overland Trail runs right through Fort Collins, which was where they basically took mining supplies from Camp Collins into the mountains and the Mummy Range and whatnot. And so Overland Trail still exists today, was the road. And so we knew the language was familiar, and then it was really funny because I will tell you, like, the first Sunday we had in Overland Church in this building, there were like nothing but Tacomas with rooftop tents parked on the front row against the road. And we actually have a picture somewhere of like, wow, people really took this seriously. So we did. We decided we would just retain the name, and there was part of it was like a simplistic thing too, of like not having to rebrand everything, and the logo is catchy and all the things that don't really matter until it matters to somebody who shows up and gets to hear about Jesus. So. But yeah, that was it. Combination of Overland Trail, some of our loves, and then finally the biggest thing was that the gospel is carried overland, and we had this idea of like overlanding literally means getting to hard, like the whole four-wheeling thing is getting to hard places on the ground, and we just said similarly the gospel needs to be taken to hard places on the ground. So yeah, yes sir.
Do you have a set of bylaws?
We do, yes.
It would be beneficial if Aleksandr could have a set
Sure.
to distribute to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely could do that. Yeah.
Have you seen our bylaws?
That's what I wanted to ask next.
No, I've not. We've talked a little bit, and I feel like I have a decent understanding, and I imagine they're extremely similar. At the end of the day, the primary difference may being when it comes to church governance, the continuum of congregational leadership versus congregational authority versus congregational decision, that kind of thing. We would be in the camp of, I'm the only elder of Overland Church right now in Durango. I am accountable to the elders still in Fort Collins, our sending church. When I say accountable, I mean they don't have an authority. I talk to them weekly, Zach and Randy and Andrew. But I'm the only one here, and our goal is to appoint a plurality of elders, as I was mentioning earlier. We believe the congregation will have a voice into every major decision, but that the leadership and with the exception of the installation of elders, that the leaders of the church will basically present the direction that the church will go, and then the congregation will raise question, they will affirm or negate it, and then maybe it needs to move further, but that the leadership moves through the elders with congregational voice, kind of, I guess is the best way that I could put it. So, yes, sir.
A merger requires a lot of flexibility, requires a lot of compromise. The people in this church are being asked to be very flexible, to make a lot of compromises. What flexibility and compromise are you willing to make?
Can I ask you a quick?
I've heard a lot, to be honest with you.
Sure. Well, let me ask you, what compromises do you feel like, when you think about the mission of Parkside Church, what do you think is at stake by the merger that you're compromising on? Because I don't know that I've heard anything yet.
Oh, a lot of things.
Can you just give me some?
Like we were talking about Sunday school literature, teachers. How willing are you to compromise on that?
On the Sunday school thing specifically?
Yeah, the literature, the teachers.
Well, I don't know that we're making any compromises on the literature, first of all, because I don't know that there was something specific. That's why I was asking if there was a specific type of literature or something that was being,
We use Lifeway.
Yeah, we use Lifeway. That's a hub for us, obviously, as well. And right now, media, we have a combination of places where we would acquire it, from whom we would acquire it. But I didn't know if it was a question about like there was some specific person or some specific teacher, author, or whatever.
We all enjoy Tom Cummings.
Yeah, I get that 100%, and I totally understand why. Like I said, I get that. That was good.
But you know, it's a good Mrs. Cummings didn't say anything.
Well, I've been to a church one time where they did not use any Southern Baptist literature. The Sunday school teacher made up their lessons as they went along.
Yeah.
So there was no way to read ahead, to prepare, to have materials for reference.
Yeah.
That kind of thing bothers me.
Well, I would push back a little bit. Southern Baptist literature can mean two things. It means it accords with Southern Baptist theology, or it means it was produced by the Southern Baptist Convention. I think one of those matters, no offense, but I think it matters that it accords with Southern Baptist or biblical theology. Whether or not it was produced by the SBC or not, that's definitely a quick fail-safe. I mean, for the most part, there's been some controversy about some of the things Lifeway's done. Ben Mandrell's taken some flack there, and I don't even think it's necessarily warranted. But my point is I totally understand having curriculum access to materials up front. I understand the trustworthiness and knowing you're going to a place where it has hypothetically been vetted. But again, I would say this is a both and thing, and as long as it accords with Southern Baptist theology, then we should be willing to consider it. I don't even like using the word Southern Baptist theology, because I think there is the Bible and there's what the Bible teaches, and I think it just so happens that Southern Baptists have attempted to stay really true and adhere with the trustworthiness of Scripture. I think when you look at the spectrum of Protestant churches right now, all you really get is people that have navigated further away from than the trustworthiness of Scripture. And I do think that's why I said I'm a Southern Baptist, and my whole family. I mean, I've got Catholics in my family and Church of Christers in my family and everything else. A lot of them probably think I'm crazy, but I think it's just because I really believe that the Bible that's true what it says, and I think that kind of makes you a Southern Baptist if you're actually willing to conform your church polity and your ecclesiology and your missiology and all the things to the Word. Now we call it Southern Baptist. I don't know. I'll put it that way.
Jerry, I wonder, is the spirit of your question sort of what gets to stay familiar? Is there a piece of this that we get to sort of hold on to and say, hey, that sort of is what I remember it was? Or is that sort of what you're saying with the compromise? Is there Like, are you looking for what gets to stay familiar on the other side of this?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You know, I think that the truth of this situation is the essentials stay the same in terms of our theology, in terms of our mission, in terms of that service sounds like what we were doing 4 years ago, and until I when it changed everything. I mean, the order of service sounds pretty similar. We're going to have a whole new group of people in here. In terms of sort of getting rid of the normal Sunday school attendance in classes, gives us an opportunity to make new relationships, and I think that's by design. The stress and the change would get us into situations where we make new relationships, we get to obviously see and take care of each other and not feel like the only new person in church when it's a new church inside our building. But, you know, the familiarity is there when it comes to theology, when it comes to mission, when it comes to culture. That's where most of the changes are. And even there, it's still with an asterisk, right? It's still an SBC church. It's still given to missions agencies we care about. It's just sort of style differences. And those can be important, and we'll miss them. But I think maybe 4 weeks in, or maybe a little longer, I don't know which parts we'll miss, you know?
Yeah,
I wonder how many people in the United States know that Hillsdale College started many, many years ago with a Baptist minister who had the same attitude that you have. Art is the president now, and that's the first thing when I start donating money to the college. He sent me paperwork to let me know how it began, because I asked.
Yeah.
Because they take no government monies.
right. Same with Southern Seminary and Boyce College, same in all the Southern Baptist seminaries right now. But that's great. No, and Jerry, is it Jerry? Is that right? Okay, yeah. I just want to affirm what Alexander's saying, and this is I hope you can understand, and this is not pity seeking at all, I promise you, but it's a challenge for me to figure out, for the sake of the whole, how everyone gets blessed. And I'll just tell you, there's this John Stott quote that keeps ringing in my head as I've thought about this whole thing, and it's that one life to live, 'twill soon be past. That which done for Christ will last. Only that which is done for Christ will last. And I think I probably butchered the quote, but just this perpetual reminder that, that our time is short. Death is unexpected. This church has dealt with that reality very recently. And I just think that really trying to be focused, as Aleksandr said, on the things that are that are the most likely to bring God the greatest glory by the increasing praise of his grace in Durango, should just govern, the way that we think about it and the decisions. And, you asked about compromises and those things, and I will tell you, I'm sure there will be things here and there, and whether this doesn't sound like it to you probably, but there is a compromise I'm already staring down about moving off of Noble Hall to some degree, where we have all these college kids coming to church, and maybe even better, I have 174 people today who don't think their church is a building, who don't think their church is a name, who don't think their church is a routine, because all of those things have been radically disrupted. They've never had a routine. We had people show up at 9 o'clock for church this morning. We don't meet till 10. Well, they didn't know why. We just changed the time to accommodate college kids. And so they're showing up, and you talk about flexibility. Everything that we have had to do has had to revolve around a degree of flexibility and a lack of certainty. And we have to just keep reminding ourselves, does this serve the mission? Is this in accordance with the vision that we have for this community and what God's done? Is it gonna advance that, or is it gonna interrupt it? Is it gonna stall it? Is it gonna chink it? And so everything is like that. And if I'll just be honest with you, when Tom and Aleksandr and I talked, and one of the questions was, what do you think would be a negative about the merger? The one thing that came to my mind was, if my people come to believe that they've arrived and they can wipe the sweat from their brow and no longer be the laborers that they've been, we have hard-working people who are chomping at the bit to be, what do I have to do? Today, I talked about our conversation that was going to happen And I made a commitment to the students that in the event we end up not in this classroom, which is going to happen because we don't even have the classroom, and in Christmas break, for example, I said, we will not forsake your ability to get to church every Sunday. If that means we have to buy a bus, we will buy a bus and we will transport you wherever we end up. But if you walked across the street today, you will walk across the street when this isn't our gathering place, and we will get you where you need to be. After church, I had a guy come up and say, I'll buy the bus. And I thought, really? I'll buy the bus. You tell me when you find the bus, you let me know, I'll buy the bus. And I said, amazing. I walk out of church. Brad Pontine pulls me over, who owns Fort Collins 4x4 accessories place up on 160, and he said, hey, if you get that bus and it needs work to renovate it to make it like you want it for college kids, you can use my shop. We'll put it in there. There are people that are longing to work and labor to see this effective, and the biggest concern that I have about moving into a building is that people say, my work is done, I can show up here on Sundays and worship and not feel like they're committed to gospel ministry and seeing it grow in all of the little ways for the foreseeable future, until the Lord says otherwise. So.
Just like many things in life, there's quite often two sides to the story. I belong to two Baptist churches up in the Front Range. I was a member of East Boulder Baptist Church for close to 15 years. I was a member of Faith Baptist Church in Longmont for about the same. Very interesting. Both of those churches took Baptist out of their name. East Boulder Baptist Church, when I joined that church, had 500 members. Do you know how many members they have now?
I don't.
45.
That's a shame.
Faith Baptist Church in Longmont had 300 members. They took Baptist out of the name. They have less than 100.
Yeah.
So yes, there may be an advantage to having Baptist out of the name, but there's also a disadvantage.
With all due respect, Jerry, I would feel shameful if I thought God was not powerful enough to keep 500 people in that church, should he so choose. And I would also say, if we were to tell God what name should be on our church because we think that's going to have the impact, I think that will be, I'm just being candid with you, I think that will be our problem. I don't think God is in heaven thinking they need to have Baptist on their church name because it's their theological tribe. I just don't believe that's true. I'm just not convinced that it's that big of a deal. I would be willing to bet what you experienced clearly wrote a narrative in your brain about why that happened, and I would say they probably got a bad pastor, they probably got somebody who didn't preach the Bible, they probably had somebody who was willing to step away from the inerrancy of Scripture. You probably could trace back the failure of that church to something that went wrong or went awry at some point in the church's history. Maybe not, maybe it was just their time. I mean, I think this is the example of one. There are healthy churches that the Lord has appointed for them to become something different. That's the vast majority of churches. None of Paul's planted churches exist. Would we say Paul was a failure? Would we say he didn't name them right? Would we say? I don't think we would. I think we would look at it and say, did he do what he was supposed to do and remain faithful to the mission? Did he remain faithful to the Scripture? Did he teach it? And then we would let the Lord worry about the consequences. My favorite thing about being Southern Baptist is actually believing in the total sovereignty of God.
Amen.
Total sovereignty of God. And that gives me great freedom to know that my job is simply be obedient in these small things. And if I'm obedient there, he's going to bless them. So I do understand what you're saying. I would say that I do not believe that the changing of the name is the problem. And I would say we moved down here without Baptist in the name, and the Lord is blessing our efforts. And we're seeing people come to faith, and we're seeing young people come to faith, and we're seeing the church grow our flock and give us laborers. And I'm thinking, he's blessing it. It's not me. It's the Lord and his sovereignty. And, we don't have the ability to drop Baptist from our name as of right now. So maybe we wouldn't fall into that camp in the first place.
I guess I don't understand why you think your congregation would quit serving the Lord if they had a permanent home.
I don't think it.
Building.
I
If
say
you're really discipleship
Agreed.
and teaching the evangelism and that sort of thing.
You're 100% accurate.
I would think it'd be a benefit
Yes.
that you have a permanent place, quote, whatever permanent is, as opposed to trying to find a place to meet whenever the college has something.
100% agree with you. And I may have said something I didn't intend. There is a lot of research that church plants when they move into a facility, if not what you just described, which is a constant discipleship and pointing them towards service and the responsibility of ministry as the saints, that people become complacent. There is a literal statistic that a lot of, and I don't think this will hit, listen, we're breaking every statistic. I don't really care about statistics. And I say that because the Lord, we keep saying, well, remember, this is what's going to happen. The Lord's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. And he keeps doing that. But there is a statistic in the Sin Network that talks about the fact that oftentimes when church acquire a building, they have a tiny bump in growth and then they become immediately stagnant and the church becomes stagnant. My job becomes making sure that if this were to happen, because I agree with you, this would be an enormous blessing. This place would be busy all week. I mean, we have enough things going on right now that this would be like a 5-6 day a week something, unfolding here. I 100% agree with you. It would be a huge blessing, but it becomes the burden for me to make sure my people don't become like, I can put my feet up. You know what I mean? That's like, right now, I don't have to fight that. Right now, everybody has to work to make church happen, to make everything go on. Everybody
set it up every week.
We do, and literally, and that can be a little exhausting, but yes, ma'am.
Betty, as your church is growing, or the church is growing, we have a facility debt-free. It's beautiful, I think. You're going to outgrow it. This church is before your congregation comes over, you've outgrown this space. So do you have a vision going forward from here?
I do. First of all, thank you for bringing that up. And we would go to 2 services probably immediately, which would be a blessing. We've desired to get to a point where 2 services make sense so that we can have Sunday school and we can have kids at different levels. I would desire to never go to 3 services. And so I think realistically looking at that space, hitting about 250 people is realistically, I think you can do some, Aleksandr walk me through, between 2 services in the church as a whole, because some people are over here and some people are over there, and dividing, like for Sunday school, some of them are kids, they're not going to be, whatever. But the goal would be to multiply rather than just growing, building bigger barns, so to speak. Mm-hmm. The goal would be to see if we are in a position where we've raised up people who, hey, we've got 20 people that are driving down from Purgatory to come to church. Why do we not plant a church in Purgatory area? What is it, Glacier and Tamaron and up the valley, Silverton.
So like
between
Overland, Purgatory, Overland.
Sure, if the Lord were to bless it, sure. And even if they didn't take the name, I don't care.
I've seen that up in Lafayette. I think it's Lafayette. There's Flatirons.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
Flatirons in there, and then there's one in Longmont.
Yes.
And they have satellite.
Yes, we would probably, I would never want to be a satellite. Just what I mean by that is I would want to have an autonomous church planted with a pastor who is equipped to do it and not be like a multi-site, mentality, but we would support them as long as necessary until you're ready to but I do think that would be the goal. I think we're in an area where it would almost be a shame to gather so many people. And honestly, the Lord is responsible for this, but there would be some problem if we just grew to the point where we need a bigger space. If we had been teaching about church planting and we've been exploring that and we've been seeing, are we in a position where we can send families? We should try to do that. This whole area is desperate for Jesus, and if Durango could be a hub for people to go and take the gospel into other areas, if it's I don't know, like I said, Arbalese or
Main Street.
Hesperus, yeah. Yes. Or Main Street. That's funny. Or up the valley, or Silverton, or Telluride, or whatever. This whole part of the state is anemic in that regard. And there have just been, you guys are, you're faithful people who've labored here for, some of you for decades, and what a testament, to your faith. But yeah, I think, I would trust the Lord in that. I would never say, like when Fort Collins, we were like, we're going to get to 200 people and we're planting a church. Well, that's not how it went. Again, now they're, trying to figure out how they can expand their building, and Fort Collins is also growing crazy a rate of people moving in. It was 200,000 when we got there, and the last thing that I heard is it's 242,000 now, for example. That's a huge change in 5 years. So it's 6 or 7 years. But yeah, that's the vision. You asked for the vision. If you asked me for the plan, I'd be like, nope, after 2 services. But the vision would definitely be to multiply as as the Lord deemed possible. So.
And about 35 years ago or so, that house next door was offered to this church for $65,000.
Trust me, you don't have to say the rest of the story. We know. Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we wanted it for expansion.
For parking.
And parking. And one person in the church talked the whole church out of buying it when we could have afforded
Yeah.
it because we were growing.
Yeah.
So in 42 years of being here, I've seen this church go from the very bottom up and then back down to the bottom and
Sure.
then up and now down to the bottom again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's remarkable. And
But like she
That building.
said, the house is old, maybe we could talk them out of it
Yeah.
because we are gonna need parking space.
Yeah.
You know what I think? If God wants us to have that house, He will give us that house. It'll just happen, and I know that, I'm using this as an example.
Sure.
But I saw it at another church. Whoa, they want this much money for that house. We don't have the funds. And I just thought, where's your faith?
Yeah.
Where's your faith? I serve a bigger God. And if God is going to bless, He is going to walk before us.
Provide.
So Deborah's gonna buy that house.
Well, I'm afraid that it might just burn to the ground. And it won't be by me.
Well, this was 2 houses, you realize that?
yes, I did.
That was the first thing I studied when I got here.
That's cool. So you think that one might burn to the ground? I know we're talking about exchanging bylaws. Maybe we should look at insurance policies too. Just to be careful. That's pretty close.
This is recorded. There's no motion from the
No.
floor.
Yeah, no, to light the house on.
Faith. I'm just talking faith.
Carolyn, we love you.
That's funny.
Yes, we do.
All right.
I guess my only fear is that it sounds great. Your church is doing wonderful, and I've been in Colorado all my life, Eastern Slope. My dad's been a pastor, started churches and that sort of thing, and we've been here forever, 40 some odd years here in this thing. But my fear is that we're gonna get lost. We're not gonna be used like we're used to being used in leadership. And that's my biggest fear, is because you're coming in with bigger numbers.
Or
And
be kicked to the curb.
yeah.
There's our musician, we gotta keep her.
I play piano too. I know you play.
Yeah,
I know. I've heard you a few times. They're good.
but that's my biggest fear.
I understand.
Is that because we're so small, we're older, and that we'll get kicked to the curb.
In association with that, when you get a sticker in your hand, it may not be very important, but it nevertheless is irritating. The sticker in my hand associated with what she's saying is the fact that, and it's probably not important to him, but it's still a sticker in my hand, is the fact that he loses his title as pastor. Now, it could be an associate pastor, it could be an assistant pastor, but he was not hired as a director. He is a pastor. And to demote him to director, if that's a correct word, is kind of like pushing us to the side. Is any of the conditions in this flexible enough when we get together to discuss this document?
Let me address what Janice said first and then address what you said, and I understand. First of all, we will not kick you to the curb. Your utility may look different in some things. I don't see any reason you wouldn't be able to play piano some if you want to play piano. We only have 2 keys players right now. I'm not one of them. I refuse to try to do that. And then I can sit on that cajon, but playing keys is a little more nerve-wracking for me. But I don't want you to feel that way. And, this may not mean much to you right now. And it will, I can say the words, but I think it's going to have to bear itself out in my behaviors. But most of my life was spent around your generation. I was raised by my grandparents. I have a great affection for people in a later stage of life and a great concern for them. And I've listened to the way that Aleksandr talks about you all and talks about his love for you, and I think he is clearly has a shepherd's heart in a remarkable way, and has loved you all extremely well. And I will not tell you that I will live up to his standard that he has set in that regard. I wish that I could, but I will just tell you that there is a part of the idea of bringing Aleksandr on to work alongside me in general is because of the fact that he fills in a lot of my lackings specifically, and his attentive concern for the individual needs of individual people that he feels responsible for is one of those good examples. And so you will not be kicked to the curb. I can't tell. I wish I could tell you here's exactly what it looks like. I have the vision in my head. I see when we were talking one day, and I said, what does it look like 1 year from now in this building? And I see you all joyful and other people joyful, and there being new life just breathed in, and a real excitement and a real sense of like participation and being around young families and just seeing the Lord's work, feeling like it's thriving. And so I desire that, and I don't want to kick anybody to the curb.
If
I
our
commit to
heart
that.
is in the right place, we should be able to service the younger people with
Sure.
answers.
Absolutely, and I think that discipleship and that wisdom will be enormously valuable. So I will commit to you that you will not be kicked to the curb, and I will commit to you insofar as Aleksandr even knows that he will have the authority to say to me, "Hey, I am seeing this for my people," and I will listen to him. I mean, if there's one thing I can tell you about me, and I think Brooke will even affirm this. Even my wife will affirm this, and if it comes from her, it's worth times 10 anybody else saying it. I am good at receiving feedback and people saying you aren't doing this well. This, you need to reconsider this. You hurt this person, and being responsive to that. I'm not defensive. I'm not a person who's like, I can't believe you. I try to be quick to repent, and I try to be quick to forgive all at once, and quick to seek forgiveness. So I just want to say that. And regarding what you were saying with Aleksandr, I understand this concern, and this is something I've sought a lot of counsel on. And in fact, in seeking counsel for this, a lot of the counsel I received was, it would be strange for you to bring on the pastor from the other church in any capacity, because you're going to have a divided sense of leadership. Who is the one in charge? Who is the leader? Is it mutual? Is the whole thing mutual? And so this is why, in an effort to remain in accordance, and I just hope you guys can understand too, we have a congregation who has invested a lot of confidence in my leadership that we were going to persist being not hasty, like Scripture says, but in the appointment of a plurality of elders, and that they will be the ones to do it. That they, as a congregation, will be the people who will, as members, nominate and install elders. We have, as of right now, we probably have, 40 members who've actually been through our membership class. We've only had one class. We had great turnout. We had a lot of covenant meetings, and I've done a lot of pastoral interviews, and we have a lot of, that doesn't count the people we brought down. That counts the people we brought down, which is like 12 adults. So 13 adults. So we want to just remain in accordance with the governance structure that we have established, that people have joined into. And again, I just can't say this enough, but we want elder, overseer, pastor to be a single thing. There will only be installed people that will receive that title. Whether they're preaching or not, doesn't matter. Functionally, not being in the office is why bringing him in the capacity of being the director of adult discipleship, whatever we figure out there and can agree upon, is not gonna diminish the voice that he has. It's gonna change the way that it looks, because all of a sudden there's gonna, if we take what we had today with your church, we're gonna be bumping up against 190, 200 people really fast. So the nature of the responsibility will change, but I wouldn't consider it a demotion. I would just, because I don't think that's what it is. I don't think this is a demotion. I think going from being the pastor of this church to being in leadership of this other church, trying to be in accordance with the bylaws that we have set forth in this church for the installation of elders, is where I don't think there's any loss in it, so to speak. And I understand if you're like, well, we're losing our representative, and I would say, no, you're not losing that, but but we don't want to have, well, there's Parkside with their leader, and then there's Overland Church with their leader. Like that would be, an immediate wedge. And frankly, that you wouldn't have kicked to the curb, not by my doing, but there would be like a selective walking to the curb, so to speak, where it's like, no, we have our own little thing, and we're going to make our way with our own little thing over here, and our leader. And I think we're going to look back on this conversation, and I'm praying so, in 6 months, and be like, oh my gosh, this is great. And what were we? The Lord was good and alleviated our fears and answered our questions. I really believe that's true.
From my side of it is, there's the church as a whole is being asked to go through a death. I mean, this is an opportunity where we're being called to die as we understand ourselves to be today, and in service of what the Lord could do on the other side of this. Now, we've bristled against that idea. It hurts. I've had sleepless nights. We've cried about it. And the pain of saying, hey, but we've sacrificed, and hey, but we've done the work, and hey, but we've been faithful, and Lord, why is it coming to this point? Anna and I have expressed and felt that on a very deep level for weeks. And God has called all of us at one point or another, or throughout the course of our life, to die to ourselves. And for me, as a pastor, as your pastor, who's been ordained by you guys, who's been honored to serve in that capacity, this opportunity is an opportunity for me to die to that idea and say, okay, what does faithfulness require of me at this point? And why would I have stipulations that would prevent progress for something that would be good for my people and for my church? And for the mission that we've been given. I guess I can be sympathetic to the fact that what does this say about church autonomy and things like that, but beyond that, I think if I just try to just keep it personal for myself, I don't need to have a particular title to serve in the capacity that I do right now. I was brought up through the congregation because I might have been acting in a particular role. I might have been acting like that role without the title, and so therefore you guys were able to say, hey, we see the calling in his life and we can ordain him, and it took the course of a month for a church that takes forever to do anything. And so it's been a huge honor, and I think for me, I'm not going to let that be a burden, because really I get to lead by example in this area where it's like, I have a sense of pride around getting to serve in that capacity and what it's meant to this point for my family, and the responsibility. I just love it, and our whole church is being asked to give up a lot, and it doesn't mean that this is ultimately a loss for us, for the church, for the kingdom. It can still be a really great thing, and it will be a really great thing, despite what we say goodbye to in the course of this. So for me, that's been my approach, that's been my attitude, and I think I get to experience it very personally, what all of us experience very personally as we consider this merger. So
one more thing I just want to say to your point real briefly is, I've got 14 or so years on Aleksandr in leadership and a couple of years in ministry, not much, less in being the lead pastor of a church. But I just will tell you that I look forward to being able to invest in him. I've done a lot of leadership, and I've raised up a lot of leaders, and I've seen young men realize their giftings and thrive. And I don't want you to think I mean this. I don't want you, if your part of your concern is coming from a concern for Aleksandr, it's not like I'm putting him on the shelf. I mean, this is not what this is. I do intend to give him a season of just respite and being able to because this is a huge, it's a burden. It feels like it's a heavy reality, but my intent is to sincerely invest in him. Just so as a young man who I can look to as I've discipled a lot of young guys. He's not as young as some of the guys I'm discipling right now, but in terms of investing in him in leadership and helping him get to a position where he feels excited about his ministry, what his role is, what he's doing. You have my word that I'm committing to that. I'm not. This isn't you're going to get demoted. Good luck over here. This is we're going to work together, and I want to be able to encourage him and invest in him in that way. So just want you to know that. From the time I met him, I've got to tell you, last thing. From the time I met him, I thought I really like this guy, and I feel like he's got a boatload of potential, to the point where when I was talking to people back in Fort Collins, people in Frankfort, Kentucky, who I was calling about Parkside, about this after we first spoke, and they kept saying, "Are you man? Most times when there's like a rebirth merger like this, they don't bring on the pastor. Are you sure you want to do this? Because that creates a lot of problems." And almost every single person has advised me against, yeah, you should keep that pastor on staff. And I will tell you, I said, well, you haven't met him. And if you met him and you knew him and you saw his humility and you saw his potential and you saw his faithfulness and what he's done and how well he shepherds, you would want him on your staff. And so I consider this a blessing for him to be able to come onto our staff. I just want you guys to know this is not, there's no like concession in order to make this merger happen, I'll just keep him on staff. I would not do that. That would be poor motives. And I believe that this is the way that the Lord has set this up. I think there was a mutual benefit to this. So I want to make
It's
sure
because you guys have the same hairline.
Yeah, well, I saw him come to town. I was like, I just got to break him into it.
But can I go back to something Alexander said just a second ago?
Please.
I want to take exception to the fact that what you said was, we're giving up a lot. I don't see it that way at all.
No, we're gaining.
I see it as we're gaining so much more in terms of being able to replicate what it is we all want to do. And that's to spread the message of the Lord Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Amen.
Now, whether this happens or not, we don't know yet. We still have to go through it. But I think it's wrong to continue to think we're giving up. It's not we're giving up. We're joining in something that has the capability to be a grand church. So, if you will allow me to take exception to what you
I'm
said.
glad you did. That's good. Well, yep, I think Tom's right. There's a lot to be gained, and really the question for us is, what does faithfulness look like from this point forward? And I personally really think that this merger is not just our best choice. I really feel that this is what the Lord wants for us, and that it'll be so worthwhile, and that we get to participate in it and enjoy it. It could be really great. So with that, I guess, Tom, could I get you to pray to close us, and then you guys can shake hands and I can run to the bathroom.
And I would love to just give you my phone number too. Anybody that wants my phone number to be able to call me if you have other questions, if things come up, you go home, you think about this, you have a conversation, I want you to be able to, I just want to make sure you did. I'm wide open with any question that you can ask. I have nothing to, I want to be totally transparent, and even if it's, even if we both understand each other and disagree, I'm okay with that. But I would love to make sure that I want to be totally accessible for all of that. So.
Right, Tom.
Father God, thank you for this time together. Father, as we've been sitting here, I continue to come back to Corinthians, Father, and at the beginning of Corinthians, Paul says, you follow Apollos and you follow Paul. Does it really make a difference, Father? We know it doesn't, Father, because you're the one that's going to be the one directing the growth, Father. Apollos planted, Paul watered, but the growth was yours, Father. The plenty was yours, Father. The harvest was yours, Father. All of it came through you, Father. So as we continue to pursue at least the thoughts of how this happens, Father, I want us to continue to remember that all of this is for your growth and your glory. And I pray these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. We've just taken a lot of your time.